My name is Knut Repter. I'm the product manager of product security at SUSE for everything that's called SUSE Linux Enterprise something. And this is my colleague, FX.
Yes, you can call me FX. So Xavier is a mouthful. And I'm product manager for BCI and everything related to supply chain security.
So, why are we talking today? And what is this about? Well, we're at the dawn of a new age. And in this new age, things like that, which is just a regular analog plug switch, will be turned into things like that. Right? So this is IKEA. This is Raspberry Pi. It's Lee Micro 5.3 on it. And in a container, it's an home automation software on it. So, but what does this mean in real life for you? Well, it's actually bending time and space. What's happening is like a black hole. It's bending time and space logically and puts the bad guys right next to your sleeping room or wherever you decide to have this device working. And of course, it doesn't only mean that that they are close to your sleeping room. They're also close to your business, to everything that matters to you, especially also the critical infrastructure. We all want to have electricity coming out of the plugs. We want water coming out of the tap. We want that hospitals are working. We want that medicaments are available and all these kinds of things. This is very, very vital. We want to have the government being able to work. Thank you for being here. And the taxes to be safe, money to be safe, all these things. But when we digitize things that have been analog before, we're creating, and one of those threats is supply chain. A big competitor from us has a major supply chain breach to tell to the public every 2 to 6 months. This is insane. They need to be, well, I think they're too big to fail. Otherwise, I cannot explain why this could happen all the time. If that would happen to SUSE, that would be a full-blown disaster. And why? It's not happening, well, because we care. And so, this is our agenda. Let me start with that slide. This shows it's not only this competitor. It's also other supply chains that has been attacked. The ENISA even created a threat landscape 2021 in the midst of it, and they counted 24 major supply chain attacks in a period of 1.5 years, with increasing things. So, and what is a supply chain? When it comes to software and to SUSE, it's basically everything that happens between the community code upstream until it hits your server and the binaries that will be deployed on your server. All of that is relevant. And because this is so relevant, the EU has decided to make it a boss thing. With Article 20 of the NIS2 directive, now the CEO is personally liable with his private money for the security. Right? And in the German implementation law, there's even written, well, in the last draft, it's not the final, but in the last draft, there's written he cannot be taken off liability until he's personal bankrupt. So the personal bankruptcy of a CEO is already written into the German law. Cool thing, isn't it? So, what could happen to him? Fines up to 10 million. And a very nice thing, there's another duty in there. He needs to get trained and trained that his stuff gets trained. This means basically that if he stands up in court and says, "Oh, I didn't know," that's already the violation. So that's a cool thing. Which sectors are subject? Well, it's these sectors, and if your entity has more than 50 employees or more than 10 million annual turnover, they're subject to this legislation. No matter if it's a company or a government office, a federal government office. So interestingly, these are, well, there's a couple of duties in there, but I will focus about the IT cybersecurity measures. And Article 21 is about this. And all the green things you can see here, you can basically handle with a very good ISO 27001 certification. But there's one thing you cannot handle via an ISO 27001 certification, neither if you have it, nor if your supplier has it. That's ISO 27000. And that's supply chain security. This is not part of an ISO 27001, and basically your supplier could skip measures. That's allowed via ISO 27001, especially if he's not subject to NIS2 legislation. That might matter for your organization, so you cannot be sure. But there is a way around that. Also, sending 200 pages questionnaires doesn't get you any safer, and not any safer in court, as I would say. I'm not a lawyer, but I would say it's not a good thing, but there is a way around that, and that's the Common Criteria EL4 certification. A Common Criteria EL4 certification, including ALC FLR3, that's an additional module for systematic flaw remediation, and that's basically Common Criteria speak for security updates, spans over everything that is relevant for the software supply chain. And this is the English text, and as you can see, a certificate like that can very much tell guys, well, somebody who's very capable has evaluated everything that is necessary for the software, the security of the cyber security of the software supply chain. So I'm telling all my customers, the triathlon of evaluation. You all will face it, whether you want it or not. Don't know how far you come there. The first thing is you need to evaluate yourself. That's due, and hopefully you do it very well. But then most people do not think about that they are going to be evaluated by the bad guys out there. And in contrast to the good guys, they just need to find one flaw and they're in. You need to find all of them. And this asymmetric situation is pretty tough, and it might lead to the fact that you end up in court if something's happening. And latest there, you need to explain what happened, and you can see this as an evaluation too. And if you then start to negotiate, well, we did this because of, and that because of, in the details, and you're not following standards, you're already pretty in a bad shape and situation. I'm not a lawyer, but what I heard from lawyers, it's not a very good situation, but there's a way around that. If you have a state-recognized certification and the evaluation of that certification had spanned over all necessary measures, one could say even the BSI or whoever did it hasn't seen it, then you're in a much, much better position in court. So I deeply recommend to have that situation created. And Common Criteria certifications come in two flavors. There's an opportunity where you just check a product against a given protection profile. That's the NIAP version, for example, which is necessary for North American entities, federal entities. Otherwise, if there is a NIAP protection profile available, you need to have a Common Criteria certification with that in order to get on the product compliance list, in order to be shopped. Well, we do this, but we also do the Common Criteria EL4 certification. And In contrast to that one, it doesn't only evaluates the product, but also the company, their processes, the production environment, until even physical tiny little details. Everything is checked into site visits. And of course, also that's ALC FLR3, are security updates available in an appropriate frequency, and also are they supplied in an appropriate and secure way. Well, we did both of that, and why isn't ISO 27000 enough for the supply chain? Well, in ISO 27001, you can take risks. And if you, as a supplier, take a risk that your customer cannot take, he's in trouble. And he's still responsible for the security of the supply chain. And the problem is, as a customer, you cannot know whether they have taken a risk or not that is important for you. So you cannot rely on an ISO 27001 certification of your supplier. But you can rely on a common criteria EL4 certification. So, how can SUSE help with that, with the operating system? Well, if you start doing an evaluation by yourself, it's a thing on an economic scale doesn't make sense. If everybody evaluates everybody, boy, we do not have enough qualified personnel on the whole planet just to fulfill these duties in Germany. Yeah, not even in a smaller country like Sweden or Denmark, right? It doesn't utterly make sense. Also, it costs immense tons of money, and even for us, it would be an immense effort to welcome all the teams of all our customers to be evaluated. And the one who evaluates is still responsible for his evaluation. If a certification authority does the same thing, it's much, much, much more efficient. And of course, they are reliable for what they do. And if it's a state entity like the BSI, it's also, they are automatically recognized by international treaties. In terms of common criteria, there are two of them. One is the CCRA, that's the international one. The NIAP 2016 lobbied away the recognition until level 4, so that is somehow covered until level 2. But if you end up in court, you could still say, well, in other countries it's on level 4, and the evaluation has been taken place by an authority you otherwise are forced to recognize. But inside the SOGAS MIA treaty, it's still fully recognized until level 4, also including this very important additional module ALC FLR3. So you're in the best situation you can get. And SUSE has it done for its operating system, so you're in a much better situation. By the way, we do not only take care about these kinds of security certifications, we take care about a couple of other security certifications, and this is somehow a little bit a map that shows what we elsewhere are taking care of. And but there's a new kid on the block, that's containers, and they're going to hand over to FX, who's going to explain you what we have to offer in that area.
Yes, we just touched on the fact that we have the right certification level for the operating system. And you know, in Linux world, operating system is not just operating system. It's all the thousands of open source components we ship, part of this operating system. So you have this level of quality for everything you consume, traditionally with zipper update, for example, on SUSE Linux. But in the container world, things are a little bit different. We all love containers because they make your life so easier. You have the consistency across environments, it's resource efficient, it works well in your CI/CD, it's platform independent, so it simplifies lives for developers, it simplifies lives for ISVs, it's great. Also, it makes lives easy. It makes one of the things easy. It makes it easy to lose track. There is a dirty little hidden secret in containers. When you download a container image, let's say on Docker Hub or whatever, for one application, let's say Nginx, you may think you're just downloading the Nginx binary and you only need to pay attention to where it comes from. But actually, in your container, you'll find at least 50 packages, sometimes 100. Because the container, it's not like a package. It contains bash, glibc, OpenSSL, systemd, all those core stuff. It contains your runtime, language runtime and library, Python, JDK, OpenJDK, PHP, etc. And you have your workload, which is the tip of the iceberg, which is mostly the only thing you're thinking about when you download a Docker image. But the thing is, with latest regulation that our good friend Knut has mentioned, your liability is not limited to the tip of the iceberg. Everything in your container is something for which you are liable. And in a typical IT environment with dozens of developer teams all taking containers from different sources, you may end up with liability for 10, 20 versions of OpenSSL, 10, 20 versions of Python, etc., etc. And yes, for you it's cool because everything is isolated and you don't have to deal with the dependencies, constraints, etc. But at the end of the day, you're going to be liable for many stuff that you haven't necessarily checked for. So that's something we really want to encourage you to look at. Where does your container come from? What kind of liability you have for those components? How were they built? How secure is the supply chain it comes from? Has it been audited? Do you have assets to play in court if something goes wrong? And here is an example, and it's a simple example. I went to Artifact Hub, which is a meta search directory for artifacts, for Kubernetes and containers. And I just tapped MariaDB this morning. This is the first entry. I'm not going to tell you which one it is. It's a very famous container artifact provider that is an enterprise service company. 110 vulnerability. I could probably have found more images with this level of vulnerability, but this is the first one that comes out. But most of the providers, they just disconnect this vulnerability scanner that is part of Artifact Hub. The CVE scanner is something you can disconnect when you put your containers, and I'm pretty sure that most of the containers you'll find on Artifact Hub, and it's even worse than Docker Hub, will have this kind of profile. And you download MariaDB, it's just one binary. No, you have 110 vulnerabilities. But we have ours. We have our containers that we build out of SLES, which is called BCI. And it's zero vulnerability. And I haven't picked the date. This is what you find today. And I've been presenting this several times the last months, and never had more than 0 for SUSE, and never less than 110 for the first one. So this is the kind of risk you can take by consuming containers from wherever you want. So what do you need to be secure and compliant? First of all, you need a reliable provider for all your containers, and you need a contract to materialize this reliability. I know everyone, especially in the developer space, we don't want to pay, we don't want to have a contract, etc. But if you don't have a contract, you cannot offload your liability. You cannot use something in court. You are liable. Good thing is, if you are using SLES operating system, your contract includes support for production of the BCI containers, so you're covered for that. So reliable provider and contract. You need to audit all the providers of all your containers, just as we showed before with this frightening drawing where you have arrows everywhere. You need to do that. Or you could pick a provider that has been granted with a certification that is widely recognized and that encompasses the software supply chain. And of course, that's what we provide and what we suggest you do. And of course, you need SBOM for all your containers, because software supply chain security is not just about ensuring nothing has been tampered with during the supply chain. It's also about being able to prove what's inside your IT environment. And the SBOM is there for that. But a SBOM that is not signed by the vendor is useless. If you can do it ex post, it's not something that will play in court. It's not something that will give you the level of reassurance of what we can do, which is full comprehensive, full transitive SBOM generated at build time, at the very moment where the system that generates SBOM also sees the source code. Building is source code laundering. You take source code as entry, you put it in a black box called the compiler, and you get the binary outside. How do you keep the trace? How you can be sure that the binary corresponds to the source code? The best way is to keep a track inside this black box. That's what we do, and we sign it. So you need SUSE BCI. So very quick, what is SUSE BCI? SUSE Linux Enterprise-based container images. Those are containers, a set of containers that we build out of SLES. So it inherits from the security and compliance posture of SLES. It's security hardened, and you have FIPS-enabled content if you need. We have the SBOM. Everything we build, and that's true for SLES as well, is SALSA level 3 grade build. So SALSA, for those who don't know, it's supply chain level for software artifacts. It's a framework that's been developed first by Google, And it used to have 4 levels, and we used to be the only one at level 4. And since then, they decided that 4 is too complicated, so now you only have 3 levels. But of course, we are still at the highest.
And therefore, we can still say we are on SUSE level 4. So that's what I.
Okay, we can say we are SUSE level 4 with respect to the version 0.1 of SUSE. And the version 1.0, we are level 3 because there's no level 4 anymore. And of course, it's secure base for every containerized workload you want to build. I won't go into detail for the rest because it's pretty obvious. It's purpose-built for container native. We talk about containers. You can run it on Kubernetes. Of course, it works very well with Rancher. You can use it on hybrid cloud, edge, cloud environment, etc. It's flexible. It's lightweight. It runs with any Linux OS, and you just get what you need. Those are containers. So why should you use it? Well, we talked a little bit about the supply chain security, which is one of the key differentiator. It's a lifesaver. It's a get out of jail free card in a way. Especially if you already pay the subscription for less, then it's really a free card. But you also have FIPS certified, as I told you, minimal base images, development environments. So your developer can work on environments with the Python version they need, the PHP, JDK, whatever you want. And then you can grab the binaries that is generated and put it in a pure base container or use the development environment as runtime. You have off-the-shelf applications. You saw the MariaDB one, for example. And you can extend those containers with the RPM packages that are part of SLES. If you have the SLES subscription, you can take your containers, extend them with every RPM packages that you are entitled to use part of your subscription. So you can pretty much build any container you want. And because we are SUSE, there's no vendor lock-in. It's freely redistributable. It works as is in Podman or Docker or in Kubernetes, and of course, it's available for free. And with that, we get back to the same image as before, supply chain security. And at the right end, you see a container, because we have the same security posture, and so we have the same kind of guarantee on the containers that you have on the Linux operating system. Now, before we leave, I just need to clarify one thing, if there is one up. There is no such thing yet in the Common Criteria Framework as a certification for containers. And as such, our containers are not certified. But we are working with BSI in making progress there, and be sure, because of where we're starting from, we'll be the first one to have certified containers. And in the meantime, it still inherits from the same software supply chain. It's actually the same binaries. And this supply chain has been audited and granted with Common Criteria EL4+. So in court, you can never be as protected as with BCI in terms of software supply chain security.
OK, thank you very much for listening and joining. Have a fabulous rest of our SUSECon 2024, I think, and also wish you a safe travel home when you're returning home, and hope to see you next year.